All right. Well, welcome to webinar number 3 during the COVID pandemic. Okay, this is Dave Elsog from Loving Utah. And we just want to share with you some ideas today. We're going to be talking about how do we do online invitation, and then how do we do online engagement of new people. And before we used to call it something like assimilation in churches, but we're going to call it the engagement pathway today. And so I just want us to just be thinking about this. It's been really great to be on different Zoom calls with different pastors here locally and some from around the country, just hearing ideas of how we can engage with people even while we're separated from them face to face. So just wanted you to be just thinking about that. Today, we're just going to be looking at some ways that we can effectively reach our neighbors. Here specifically here in Utah, we think about our LDS neighbors. We think about those who are far from Christ, people we're trying to reach in our neighborhoods, in our communities. And so I want you to be thinking about that today. How do we engage them? Now we can't even go have a conversation with them at a coffee shop, now we can't invite them to come to our church and visit our church in the same ways that we used to be able to. So we're going to think about those kind of things as well. And then what we want to do is, as we're doing this, maybe you'll think of an idea, or maybe you already have an idea of ways that you're engaging people online right now. And so we'll talk about that in a little bit. I'm going to share my screen here. And we're just going to be talking about elevating invitation and engagement for Easter and beyond. I know we're recording this on the Monday before Easter, so maybe there's some things we can even kick into gear before we get to starting this week. All right, so a lot of this stuff we're going to be talking about comes out of a book called Intentional Churches. This Intentional Churches is it's a church operating system, and it's a way for us to be thinking about how to fulfill the Great Commission. It comes out of about 20 years of experience of churches from all across the country. Small churches, big churches, mega churches that are using these principles, not being prescriptive, but saying, what is God doing in your unique church, in your unique community, with your unique leadership team? And how do you motivate your staff, your church, your board, your elders to carry out the Great Commission? And so I'm happy to send any of you guys a free copy of this book. I have boxes of them in my dining room that I want to get rid of. I bought them for an event that we're not going to have, so I want to get them into your hands. It's really practical, and it's something you could take your team through. Last week we talked about the Great Commission engine. Most of you were on this call. I don't know if everyone was, but if you weren't, I just want to walk through it real quick. We base this on the idea of 3 scriptures: Matthew 28, the Great Commission; Acts 2, when the church was formed, and they met in homes, they met in temple, and then they lived out and followed the teachings of the apostles. So these kind of things. This is not a rocket science thing, but this is an analytic tool that we use and ask how your church is doing on these 5 things. And then we talk about Luke 15, how the good shepherd leaves the 99, goes after the one, and how do we reach the one effectively. So normally we would be talking about this in the context of your church, thinking about your church building, thinking about your church service, thinking about your discipleship programs and all those things. But really, this is what the church has been doing for 2,000 years, and we believe that we still need to be paying attention to these specific things. And we've seen churches that really pay attention to these 5 things are advancing. They're getting clearer on their messaging. They're getting more aligned with their staffing, with their boards, and with their congregations. So real quickly, just walking around this, at the very top, you see the gathering. So this is your weekend worship experience. We would talk about how is that doing? And you go to the right, following the arrows, life-changing relationships. These can be played out in many different ways, small groups, Sunday school classes, different types of things. But how do life-changing relationships, how are they doing? How are they working in your church? The third thing we talk about is surrendered living. This is sacrificing time, talent, treasure, attention. How is your church doing on following Jesus and really living a life that's sacrificial to him? In the center is what we call our one, and that comes from Luke chapter 15. And we want to help churches get really clear on understanding who are the lost ones in your community, who are the people around your church, that live around your church, people that you could have touch points with, that you can serve and that you can reach with the gospel. And so we say, we got to be thinking about our one, we got to be thinking about the people in our community as in relation to the gathering, life-changing relationship, and surrendered living. And then up in the top right corner, it says simple steps. This is what we call the engagement pathway. And we're going to talk about that today. So we're going to move on to engagement pathway. And all this is in the book as well, so you can look that up. But what we're going to talk about is, this is simple steps. So I'm going to just walk you through this. We have some people that have actually gone through the engagement pathway and gone through intentional growth planning with us. So that's Mike, if you want to wave, Mike Packer and Randy Clay, and Ben Helton and Nate Fox. So those guys. So before we do that, I want Pastor Cherie, could you just unmute and could you just share the story of your experience with being online and your LDS neighbor? I'd love to hear that and share that with everybody.
So for those of you who don't know me, I'm kind of new to this group and new to Utah, and I am the pastor over at a Methodist church in West Jordan, and I live over here in Harriman. And so I'm really kind of still learning and learning a lot more about the LDS church. When I first moved in here, one of the neighbors came out. She's one of the neighbors that knows everybody and everything. And so sometimes that's a good neighbor to have, because she'll tell me things like, oh, Cherie, you need to make sure your tree for Christmas is outside on the curb on a certain date, because then they'll pick it up. You know, so she is a person that kind of helps me understand what's going on in our community. And the other day, so not this Sunday, last Sunday, she sent me a text and she said, Cherie, it's really interesting that you live next door to me, but I have more interaction with you through your YouTube channel than I do with you living next door. And so what that means is she's been watching some of my communications to the church every week. And then when we finished with our lives, I have 2 Sunday services where the message was recorded here in the kitchen and posted on YouTube. So she had her link. And so she was it was interesting that she sent me that text. And then what Dave hasn't heard is in this week, there was a post from me and a lot of other Christian churches for Palm Sunday to decorate your doors or your windows with evergreens or palms or whatever you had. And so she went to our neighborhood Facebook page and said, my neighbor's a pastor and she wants us to decorate all of our doors for Palm Sunday. And then she sent me another text and she goes, so Cherie, I have one question. Me and the kids are just making palm prints, but do we hang them above the door or on the door? And so it was really interesting because they talk a lot about Moses. And so I just told her, I go, well, this is the first time that we have done this really as a Christian church to put them on our doors, but you can put it in the middle, on the side, wherever you would like. And so it made me realize that our footprint is broader than we even realize. And that's the story I shared with Dave just last week. And it excites me because I've been praying about doing a Bible study, but I'm still kind of learning what the best approach is from a relationship perspective. Do I talk to the bishop? Do I just kind of do it out on my own? So he just wanted me to come and share that story that people are watching and observing, and it could be for the glory of God.
Yeah. Thank you, Cherie. And all I know is that our churches that are going online, and not only just Sunday mornings, but midweek devotionals, prayer meetings, different things where we're going online, people are engaging at a higher level than they had before. I was just on a prayer meeting with Mike Packer and his church the other night, and like 35 people showed up for this prayer meeting. How often do you have a prayer meeting that you call and 35 people show up and earnestly praying and earnestly seeking God? And so people are watching online, and I know that our neighbors are, our LDS neighbors. And that's why, as we're talking today, I want us to be really thinking about not just the 99, okay? So that's kind of our tendency when we go into like emergency mode, like take care of the people that we're closest to. And so a lot of effort is being put into the 99 right now, following up on your congregation, how are they doing, everything. And that is really good. But I think we have an opportunity at this moment and this week at this Easter for the church, if we do this right, that we could have the largest Easter audience in human history. And so the ideas that are coming up today, but I want you to just be thinking about these, because what are some of the things that we could be doing? You know, what are some of the things that we could be doing better to engage those that are listening? Somebody gave me an interesting title for the people who are coming on, and they call them sneaky peekers. Okay, so Utah's sneaky peekers are peeking in on your church, right? And I believe in that in Utah more than any other place, that we don't have a Christian culture that knows all the big evangelists, that knows the big churches, or who would even trust a national preacher or evangelist. But we do have people who trust our churches, who know people who go to our churches, who've driven by our churches. I remember as we were going through Intentional Growth Plan with Randy Clay, when they started reaching out into their community in a whole different way, somebody came in and said, I've been driving by your church for 9 years and feeling God's tug, but until I got a personal invite, I didn't walk through your doors. So personal invitation, even higher than social media invitation, right? So we can do all those things, but let's just be thinking about how do we engage the one during this time. So I'm going to walk through the engagement pathway with you guys, and this would be the regular engagement pathway when your church is meeting in a building and having services and being able to do that stuff. I want to walk you through that one first, and then I'm going to walk you through a second version of what would it look like online. And when we get to that second version, it's going to parallel the regular engagement pathway, but I think there's more questions than answers right now. And so that's why we're here. We're going to pick each other's brains. We're going to learn from each other. But I think right now there's more questions than answers because we're all trying to kind of catch up on this. So I'm going to go back to my share screen and get up here the engagement pathway. Okay. So if you look on the right side of the screen, just kind of, this is kind of an explanation of what the engagement pathway is. So this funnel that you see, think about that as your church, okay? This is your church. This is different steps. Each line there has a different step that you're trying to help somebody who's never been a part of your church get through these steps. And you're trying to lead them towards Jesus and the gospel. And you might have something like this. You might have pieces of this. You might say, oh, we have this piece, but we don't have this piece. That's what we find in many churches. And this is something that you have to continue to work on and tweak as you're doing this. So, so the funnel's your church. The one up in the top left corner there, you look at the little guy waving. That's the one. That's people who live near your church. They don't know Jesus yet. They don't attend a gospel-centered church, but they might be living right next door to you, or down the street from you, or right around the corner from your church. They might be Cherie. It's your neighbor and all your other neighbors who are sharing the gospel with each other, even though they don't know it. So it's pretty awesome. But outside of the funnel is really where invitation takes place. So as you're training your congregation to invite others to be part of the church, inviting others to come and hear the gospel, come and see, come and hear. You know, the best way is person to person, but we also do, you know, we sometimes print stuff, send stuff in the mail, do social media, and we're encouraging people. We should be encouraging people in our congregation to, how do they invite their friends, their family, their neighbors into the weekend gathering or into the next step, depending upon if that next step is different in your church. On the left side, there's a blue arrow going down. And we talk about you can do this programmatically, but really you should do it in relationship. So how do you move people from the top of this funnel down the funnel in relationship? So you got to think about that. Is there a person? Is there a group of people that can help shepherd people through these different steps? And then we, you know, most people. We just know that most people show up to Sunday church first if they're a visitor. Sometimes people enter into church a different way, but the majority of people in America that we found, they're getting invited to church and they're coming to church. Well, then what are the baby steps that they can take? And we try to be extremely simple with baby steps, like something easy. It's one thing they have to do. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then following that is the first steps is, and a lot of churches, including Randy's church and Ben's church, they call it first step class. And you know, it's usually a place that you can invite them to hear the gospel, to tell them a little bit more about your church, how they can get involved in their church. And then we talk about next steps, which could be pretty broad, different ways you could do things, but we're always encouraging churches to create next spiritual steps for everyone in your church and first steps for their friends. So the next steps of discipleship for people in your church, but first steps for their friend who's going back up to the top of that funnel is the one. So, and then when we're working with churches, but you can do this, you can start doing this with your own, is try to fill in what are those things. So on a regular one, if you look at the funnel, weekend gathering, we talk about your website's your front door, then people walk into your facility. You know, what is their experience in their facility? Is it confusing or is it clear? Do they know where to go? Do they know where to go to drop off their kids? Is it easy? Is it simple? Or, you know, how is worship going? How is kids going? How are the teenagers doing on a Sunday morning? So weekend gathering is a very much kind of a holistic view of everything that happens on a Sunday morning. A baby step number one is just we teach churches to say there's something they can do today, right? So at Lifestone Church, they do text to connect. And at Southeast, they do meet us at the red carpet. So there's a place in the lobby. Up at Roy Christian Church, it's meet us by the fireplace. If people walk out of the auditorium, the first thing they see is a fireplace. It's a real easy place to go. And it's like, you want to stop in and we have a gift for you, or we'd love to meet you and we'd like to greet you. Something real easy for them to do, right? And if they don't want to do it, they don't have to do it, right? But that would be baby step number one. Baby step number two might be, once you meet them, say, hey, once a month we have pizza with the pastors, or we have a cheese and chat or something. These are just different ideas that churches have done, and come meet us. And we'd love to get to know you a little better. It's a little bit more extended time. And then from there, you can invite them, hey, first step, or getting started at our church, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, you can call these whatever you want. But that would be a place where you're inviting people to hear the gospel, understand what baptism is, understand that the Bible is reliable, big deal in Utah for people who have been taught their whole life that the Bible is not reliable. You can use this as a platform for that. And then next steps, which again can get really broad, is just your ongoing discipleship, how that plays out in your church. Mike, what have you learned from the engagement pathway over the last year? Mike Packer?
Yeah.
There you go.
Had to unmute. I think for us, it's trying to make it so you almost have to avoid the step. So make the step so simple that you have to go out of your way not to take the step. And so like the biggest one for us is the red carpet. And so we know that most of the people exit. And so I leave the service a little bit early and I stand on the red carpet and wait for people to come through. And sometimes they give you a wave and other times they stop and they chat. But we just keep refining it like that. For us, it's, it's not, I think one of the big things that we've learned is it's an ongoing conversation. It's not just, okay, we have this silver bullet and now we're done. We've tried a few different things. And at first, like we started like a 10-week class, and that worked really well for us for the first 2 or 3 times that we had it. But if you look down at the bottom, it's the next step. It's getting them plugged into the ongoing discipleship. And so we had people going through the class and then they fell off. And so for us, like it's not hitting the goal. So even though we had this class, it's not reaching, it's not getting them onto their ongoing discipleship. And so we moved to an afternoon class, and that seems to be working better for us. We have a higher retention rate of people sticking around after they go through that. So
cool. Hey, Randy, why don't you share a little bit what you've learned out of the engagement pathway and how you're applying it at Cross Tower Church of Christ? Randy, you need to unmute.
Dave, I don't see him here anymore.
yeah, he's gone.
Oh, he's gone. Okay, let's go to Nate. Nate Fox, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. Well, what are some of the things you guys have learned in the last year at Lifestone, and maybe some things you even started to apply before we went into the shutdown?
Well, I think as far as the engagement pathway, I think just keeping it simple and really trying to make it about people. There's one thing that I've noticed in my years of ministry here in Utah is that we've got a unique one, as we would define it. And a lot of us, no matter where we're at in Utah, probably have a very similar one that we're trying to reach. And that one has this unique sense of, yes, I really want to get to know you, but don't get to know me. And so there's this frustration because the more you pursue, the more they run away. But if you don't pursue at all, they never feel like they're invited. And so we've got to manage that reality. When I was at Centerpoint Church, that reality was huge for us. We had to know, how to play our cards right. You've got to know how to make it seem like a little bit nonchalant, like, hey, if you just want to come to lunch, it'd be awesome. We'd love to get to know you and you can get to know us. And super non-committal. And then, but when you get in that setting, then really try to get to know them and engage them. And so I think anytime you do that first step of like a lunch, or maybe that's the second step, you really, really want to make it about them. and spend at least half of your time just getting to know them. I mean, the truth is, they're probably this much interested in things like mission, vision, values, DNA, and history. They want to just connect. And so it can be something where we kind of go, oh, they want to know everything about us. Well, they probably don't. They probably want to get to know us, and people build rapport naturally by having themselves talk and you being interested in asking good questions and listening. And so I think when you get into that scenario of that second step, at least of having some sort of a gathering or a lunch, make it as much about those people as you possibly can, and really listen and try to get to know them, because that's how they're gonna build that rapport with you and trust you down the road. And then I would just say the next step, we try to make it basically systematic theology light. Let's talk about worldview, like essential theology, like who is God? How do we define God, and his role, Jesus? And then adding onto some of those theological concepts, those essential theologies, give them some apologetics. I think that's huge. This culture cries out for prove to me that it's not all just a fraud. Why are they thinking that way? Because they feel like they've been scammed. And so simple theology combined with simple apologetics. And this is not any of my brilliance. I discovered that working at Centerpoint Church. Scott McKinney is the mob boss of simple theology combined with simple apologetics for reaching Mormons, and he's a master at it. God's given him a gift at that, and I learned that from him, and it works. It really helps people track, because they're craving this desire. They're just craving this need for prove to me that it's not all a fraud. So those are two of the things. I could go on, but I'm going to spare you the full 2-hour report on that.
Okay. Ben Helton. Ben is the church planter. He was the founding pastor at Lifestone Church. Been here for about 7 years at Utah. Nate just joined their team just in the last 6 months. And so, Ben, what are some of the things that you've seen, maybe things that you thought would work and maybe didn't, and maybe some things that you've done that said, these are some things that are now working well?
Yeah, well, I guess just the whole concept of baby steps that I think initially we, 6.5 years ago, when we tried to put in place a process of engagement, of, assimilation, we had we were asking people to take steps that were way too scary for them, and understanding the culture here more. It is, I don't mean this disparagingly, it's like you're approaching a wounded animal or something, that you have to be, understand the wounds that they have and they're coming from. And so patience, and with that patience, you develop these smaller steps that people can engage your church with, and put yourself in their shoes and understand that. I think one of the biggest things for us is just the long game, thinking, okay, even if we have and like Mike said, it's always developing, but if we have this set process in place, some people might just go right through it and tick, 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 and just go from one thing to the next. But we found a lot of people, it's at their own pace. Because they're very hesitant, they're very skeptical because of their background, and if we keep that all in mind, we're loving them, understanding how they're processing it all. And so I think that's one of the biggest things. I just want to get them through a curriculum and like a schedule, and like, here's my 3-month process to engage someone. And for some family, it might take 1 month, and another family, it might take 3 years. And I don't think if we press them, kind of like what Nate was saying, those people who are just going slower, it's probably just going to push them away. And so it has been just a big process of learning all these dynamics, with our unique culture.
That's good. Okay, thanks, Ben. Thanks, everybody. What we're going to do now is I'm going to go to the next funnel, and it's going to look a little different. It's going to look similar to this, but what I've done here is, if you look at the funnel, on the left side of the funnel, it's the same as the previous one, but then I split it, and then on the right side of the funnel is some questions about how could we do this in a way that is online. How are we going to engage people online in the same way, or maybe a different way, or we're going to try some different things. And this is where we're kind of getting into innovation right now, is trying to figure out how do we do these things, because we know what we can do, right? So the majority of churches in America are now online. Many of them have been online before the shutdown, but some that were not have been forced to go online, do their services, Sunday services online. But we can't just be thinking about Sunday services. I believe we need to be thinking about the entire engagement pathway. So that's what we're going to think about today. And I have a lot of questions, so I hope you guys have a lot of answers today. Invitation. So let's go back all the way to the top of the funnel. Invitation. We're not just inviting people to church now, but we're inviting them to online church. And so join our services online. Hearing of churches that are just getting multiple views online than their average week in attendance is just kind of where we are in this season. So I think we need to just take advantage of that. So invitation, we were talking a little bit about this today in a staff meeting I was on with Southeast Christian, and just thinking about how do we get our congregations, how do we train them to invite to online church, right? So can we equip them with graphics? Can we equip them with social media invites? Can we equip them by sending them a text with the link to our online service and say, send this to your friends, text this to your friends. Hey, we'd love to have you join us for Easter on Facebook watch parties, things like that, where trying to remind our Christian brothers and sisters and remind our flock that it's not about us, right? It's not just about the 99, but there are all these people in our lives, coworkers, neighbors, people we go to school with, whatever, that we still care about. So how do we think about reaching them when we can't talk to them face to face, right? So inviting them. And then online baby step number 1. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes here, but what are some of the ways we can invite people who are tuning in online? Maybe they are sneaky peekers. Maybe they are our neighbor next door who's watching us on YouTube or whatever. What baby step could they take? Is it text to connect? Hey, text us, or is it go to our website and you could click prayer requests and we'd love to pray for you? Is there any way that you can make that first step connection? Because they can't meet you in the lobby now. And then baby step 2, they can't come to a lunch with you. So is there a way, is there something that you can invite them to online to that? And then a first step, how could you do a first step online? Like how could, not just recreating your class or recreating your content, but is there a way to actually engage with people, maybe through a Zoom call or whatever, of saying, hey, if you want to know more about Jesus, here's a way that you can jump in. So these are some of the questions that we have. And then I think a lot of churches actually that I've been talking to and listening to and trying to learn from over these last 3 weeks is a lot of them are doing their next steps pretty well. So like their Bible studies and their small groups are still ongoing through Zoom calls. Youth groups are meeting through Zoom calls or through Instagram chats, things like that. So those things are actually kind of going. It's these things that are in the middle that if somebody's not walking through our door, but they're logging online, how do we connect with them? So that's the big question. So here's some ideas that we've come across, and then I'd love to hear from you guys as well. So here's some ideas for inviting the one online. Is first, just raise awareness to your congregation. Let your people know we want you to invite people to Easter service. So here's some ways you can do it. If you can text everyone in your congregation with a link, would be great. If you give them social media opportunities, you can do that. Get the word out to your friends, your neighbors, and your family members, okay? This has got to come from us as pastors to remind people that it's just not about them, but Easter is about sharing the greatest news of all time. And we want as many people to hear it as possible. That they can compel people to join their online service. Consider Facebook ads. Some of you have done Facebook ads before. I don't want to really get into how to do that. You can figure that out. But Facebook ads, targeting your neighbors, you can do that as well. Probably not for this week, but mailers, banners, other marketing could be options as well of pointing people to your online service. I think maybe people may pay more attention to it now than before. I don't know, but other different kind of marketing ways. So what are some ideas that you guys have, and anyone can share? Maybe just do a wave your hand if you got an idea. And what are some ideas that you guys have about inviting people from the community online? I'm just looking for hands. Okay, Ben.
Okay, I'll just tell you real quick what we are doing. I think the personal invite, you mentioned that, Dave, is the most powerful. And so we have equipped our people, our life groups we've given them invitations to Easter to share with their neighbors. And of course, we've tried to be very strict on following the protocol that we have to follow nowadays. But we already had Easter invites for people to share personal notes to people to invite, because we do see that is the most powerful. And so we gave those out with instructions to point them to our online service. We also have stuff for kids online, so that I think a lot of people can tend to forget that is, if you're not reaching the kids here, it's going to be hard to reach any families. And then we threw in last week, a couple weeks ago, we ordered hundreds of Case for Easter books, little, cheap little pamphlet almost books, to share almost as a gift. And then we were already collecting Easter candy. So we're packaging this all together: personal note, invite online, small little Case for Easter book, and candy, and asking them to share it with their neighbors next door, basically, if they feel comfortable putting it on their doorstep, all those kind of steps. So that's what we're doing.
Cool. Hey, Mike Packer, we were talking about some stuff this morning. What are some of the ways that you're engaging people to invite?
Yeah, so that's similar to you, Ben. We are putting together Easter baskets, and then because we already had our eggs packed and everything ready to go, and just a similar thing, we have Easter, coloring books or whatever to go in the baskets, and then we went ahead and just, I don't know, like we wanted some weight to it, and so we bought. Every family will get a Easter. What is it? Oh, it's the Jesus Storybook Bible. And so we included that. But we're doing that with our kids that we have. But then we put an online form on our website that said, if you want a basket, to let us know, and we'll go ahead and deliver one of those baskets to your neighbor also. And so we have people from the congregation that are saying, hey, I've always wanted to invite this family in our neighborhood with kids. And so they'll put their name in, and then we'll take a basket to their house for them. And then along with that is, right now, we're trying to do it safely. And so we're packing everything with the masks and with the gloves. And we're kind of, when we're packing, when we have our packing party tomorrow, we're going to be distant 6 feet apart. We're trying to do all this stuff just to make sure that we're being careful about it. But we're also posting that. So like, I know there's one family, it happened to be my mom. We have some neighborhood kids, or she has neighborhood kids across the street. She can't remember their names. And so she called the mom across the street, and she's like, we don't want anything. We don't want anything coming inside of our house. They're just terrified of that. And so we're really just trying to respect people's privacy. But then along with that, we're trying to get our congregation to share as they're online, to email, to page shares, Facebook event, and everything, all that stuff that you would normally do.
Anyone else on the idea of invitation? Maybe some creative ways. Victoria, do you have something?
Yeah, so I recognize that like our demographic is really different, but we live in a pretty isolated community where people purposefully move here to be away from everyone else. And so the social distancing aspect of all of this has been super easy because like we social distance every day of our lives here. But we have ramped up. I mean, we do a lot online as it is, but one of the ways that things we developed, I guess, to get kids and families involved is we are in the process of opening a brand new building that was supposed to actually have a grand opening this last week. And so we have hidden Easter eggs all over our building, and we go through and a different staff person takes a picture of like a specific area. We post it online as like a virtual Easter egg hunt. And so the kids can get online. This is Joel. The kids can get online and count the Easter eggs. And then our kids director, yes.
Will you give me my drink?
Yes, I'll get you a drink. Hold on. Our kids director is kind of keeping tabs of the kids that get all of them right, and then putting together little like gift packages for them, that if they want them, then she like drives around town and drops them off at their door. But we started that today, and we've had like over hundreds of people post on it already. And so it's been a cool way to like show off the new building, but get kids involved, and it's Easter themed. And so every time they click it, it's going back to our Facebook page for our church. And so they're seeing all the Easter promo stuff anyway. And then my husband is our executive pastor right now, and he does like a midweek contact email to anyone on our listserv. And he has integrated, and I'm not sure how he did this because he's not the most tech savvy, but he's integrated a like share button basically for all of our Easter promotional stuff. So they can click that button and send it to whoever they want, and it sends them all the info for online services for next week, which has been really cool. And I don't know what his click rate has been on all of that, but I thought it was a great idea just to be able to easily share it without having to copy links and all this other stuff. So
Those are some great ideas. That's awesome. Yeah, and one of the things that we talk about with the baby steps is that a baby step should be real easy to understand. Like, meet us at the door on your way out, right? And now being online, one of the things that somebody brought up the other day was a baby step should be one click. Someone should be able to find it in one click, to go here, there. Where did you say that was? Oh, right there. Click. Okay. So not that they have to search through your church website, 8 layers deep, to figure out how to get online at your church. I mean, it should be on your homepage. If it's not, I would suggest after this after this call, get on your homepage of your church and just figure out how to click that. Those are good. Anyone else an idea on invite that would be helpful that we haven't mentioned yet? Yeah, Kevin.
So for me, this is going back more my youth ministry days, but equipping people to know who their one is.
Yeah.
Us as pastors, we have a ton of people we want to see come to the kingdom. But if every member of our congregation would have just one person, it could be simple as pray for them, ask them, how can I pray for you? And then invite them.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Yep. And I think the most important thing is that we remind people that that's their job, you know? This is what you should be doing. And as I was praying today, I was even trying to think through the people in my life, right? That I have their phone numbers in my contact book, and I know they're not following Jesus. That I need to be this week, you know, texting them and pointing them to, hey, you could join our church online, or if they're not from here, if they're not from Utah, that I can figure out a church maybe that's in their neighborhood that I can say, hey, tune into this church and watch their service. So if we could be thinking about pointing people to that, that'd be great. I want to go on to the next topic here, which is ideas for engaging. Again, this is probably things that we have never really had to think about, most of our churches, is engaging people in baby steps and next steps while we're online. I know there's a few churches that have online campuses, and they probably know what they're doing, and we're just all catching up. And so, but I just had a few bullet points on this for us to be able to think through. So make every step easy, a one place, one click. We talked about that. We talked about creating awareness in your congregation. How do you invite people to online? That would be a non-threatening baby step, okay? So like Lifestone Church has a text to connect. And so they use that in their service. It's been really successful, where they say, hey, you can text to connect. Man, it records their phone number. Now you have a two-way communication to communicate with people after that. And so it can start a conversation, right? And you can ask them, how can I pray for you? Is there anything I can do? Some churches have contact cards online where you can fill out a contact card. Mike Packer, what is the idea of a fundraiser contact card idea? We don't know if this is a great idea, but Mike, share with what you guys are going to do this Sunday on Easter.
We're thinking about doing.
Yeah.
We're just trying to figure out like how to gather information, because if we have 500 viewers or however many, it's like that's great, but if you're at church, like you typically hand out like a bag or a gift or something like that. And so I've seen it before, and I've always kind of felt a little bit dirty with this, but we're in kind of unique times, and so we just might give it a shot. But we thought for every communication card that we get, and we have it online, that we're going to make a $5 donation. Brainstorming kind of an idea.
The rescue.
But then the other thing that we're trying to do, that we're thinking about, is like you have your service and nobody's going to stop watching stuff to do a follow-up reminder on Monday morning to engage them after the fact. And so just a reminder, hey, if you fill this out and here's the link, $5 donation to the rescue mission in your name.
Cool.
So
Cool. For me, Mike, you were breaking up just a little bit in your what you're saying, but basically saying, hey, if you fill out a contact card, we're gonna give a $5 donation to the rescue mission. which was, damaged during the earthquake. And if you don't know about what's going on with the rescue mission, you can go on Loving Utah's Facebook page. I just put a post there how we can help. They're in a different location. They've had to move to a different building. It's crazy that in the middle of all this, they can't be meeting in their regular place. So another church did a give help, get help buttons on their homepage. And this was a way to say to people, we know you're hurting, and we have people that also want to help. So they're using that to collect people's information and trying to put them together. Another, I know K2 the church has a Facebook page that they started that just called K2 Cares. People can post on there like, hey, we need groceries, or we're looking for a specific product, or whatever. And then they connect and someone can deliver groceries to their home or whatever. So those are some kind of things. For next steps, consider a Facebook group or a Zoom group, or maybe an online Bible study. Mike and I were talking about this morning about a lot of churches will do a sermon style small group where they'll have questions about the sermon afterwards. That small groups will kind of go through and talk through that. The idea could we develop a new way of engagement where we say, hey, you heard the message today, and here's 3 questions I'd like you to think about. And here's a place where we're actually going to answer these questions in a small group on a Zoom call. And we invite you to do that. You can sign up for that. You can register for that. And the pastor could just say, hey, I'll be there to answer your questions. We'll have a conversation with a few people, and we'd love to do that. So that's just another thought. So then my question is for you guys, all of you, what are some other innovative ways we could do baby steps and next steps, or maybe some things that you're already doing to do that? So we'll get back here. Wave your hand if you have an idea. Anybody? Randy Clay, you're back.
Well, I don't know how. Yeah, some of my internet went out. I think it's went out about 5 times a day. So it shows during the meeting that I go. Anyway, I don't know how innovative this is, but we're talking about filming all of our first steps and next step sessions and putting them online for people to go and just, hey, if you want to know more about the Bible, do you want, click a class and you can go through it. Then if you have questions, have my email there at the end to say, click on that. I don't know how innovative that really is, but to take advantage of people at home, maybe they're bored and maybe they'll jump on. And so we're going to do that invitation at the end of this Easter. But I like the, it's kind of strange. My neighbor came to me last night. Well, she texted me and said, hey, are you going to put your Easter service online? We want to watch. And they're LDS. So I don't know how much the LDS is doing online, but all my neighbors are saying, hey, can I watch your service? So they're asking us. So that's kind of cool. And so I'm just wondering if getting a door knocker thing and just going around my neighborhood and inviting them to the online service, just putting a little, just putting a little door hanger. I know that's low tech to go high tech, but I don't know.
Yeah. And you know what? Because it's not a tradition in the LDS church to have online church, right? Other than at conference time, that we offer something that they need. They need a message of hope, right? Yep. They need to hear about Jesus, and they know we exist. But they may not know that they can actually watch us online. Right. That's why I want to think invitation,
Yeah.
Heightening invitation.
Yeah, she asked my permission.
Yeah.
Can I watch your service?
Right.
I thought, sure.
Yes.
Yeah, you can watch my. I said, and I told her, invite your ward, tell them they can watch online.
Of course.
I'll tell them. They'll be excited. Well, I don't know how to. I bet the bishop's not going to be excited, but other than that, and so I think they're eager, and I do think they're looking in.
Yes.
I'm convinced of that. So, and they're intrigued by, like last couple Sundays ago, another neighbor of mine. We have a neighborhood Facebook page, and I had put on my Facebook page, come by the building and get your Lord's Supper stuff. And she private messaged me. She said, "Do you mean that your people can serve themselves the Lord's Supper?" I said, "Yes, we believe in the priesthood of all believers." And she goes, "Well, she said the Christian church is more adept to this house church thing than we are." And I said, "Well, that shouldn't be, because the church was birthed. If you have restarted the true church was birthed in house churches." So she goes, "That's a good point." And so she said, "I want to know why my church isn't as practical as yours." That's exactly what she said.
Okay.
I said, "I don't know."
Oh,
Well, I do, but I didn't want to start an argument on private message. So I do think, Dave, in all of this, just invite. I think the personal invitation, the neighbor knows you, you know them, invite them. And I think they're seeking. So anyway.
that's good. Hey, Mike, did you have a thought? Think I saw your hand wave.
I was just thinking that makes a lot of sense that they would ask to watch the service, since a lot of their stuff is in the temple and considered sense that they would do that. And then just one of the things that we're wrestling with for that next step, for that first step, is like how much of it online versus how much, and leave online versus how much, so you can record like your first step class and you can go through all that stuff, which is great. And then if you have like a Zoom meeting where you invite people and you talk through prayer and that type of stuff, do you keep that online or do you take it down for your in the next few days? So that, I don't know the answer to that. So if you guys figure that out, that would be really helpful for us.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. So we're gonna end this webinar here in a few moments. This is great insight. We're gonna keep learning from each other, and so that's kind of my goal for every Monday doing these webinars for the time being. That you can tune in, or if you can't tune in at 1 o'clock, I'll send the recordings out within an hour of this webinar in an email so that you can watch the recording. And we really want to learn from each other how to be more effective during this time. And I'm getting more and more excited for Easter than ever. It's going to be weird, it's going to be strange, it's going to be different. But at least God gave us a few weeks of runway time to kind of figure out how to do church online. And then we'll figure out how to do follow-up as well. So we'll be thinking, and I'll be talking to other people. I'll be on a call of pastors across the country on Wednesday, trying to learn from them some of the same things we're talking about here. And then hopefully we'll be able to share even more next week. So, and again, the Intentional Churches book it's really amazing. As I was reading it, and I've been a part of their group for a long time, but as I was reading it, and there's some of you already have the book and you've already read it or you're working on it, just feel I personally just feel the power of the Holy Spirit speaking to this, saying to the church, we got to get back to basics. We're not trying to create something brand new and crazy, but we got to get back to the Great Commission. And so often we find that churches are taking their eye off of it, or they're doing other stuff, or they get preoccupied with different things. the Great Commission starts to suffer. So I'll send you a copy of this. I'll drop it in the mail as soon as I get your address. And so go to lovingutah.org, fill out the form. I'm just asking for your name and address so that I know where to send it to. I'll drop it in the mail. I don't know how fast the mail is going these days. But
Dave,
yeah.
I got mine in less than 24 hours.
Are you kidding me? Well, that's pretty awesome.
All the way up here to the wilds of Roy, it made it across the fruited plain like
Okay.
in less than a day. So nice.
Hey, that's good to hear. All right. Well, I want to pray for those of you who are on this call and those of you who are watching before we go. Lord, I thank you for these pastors, these leaders, those of us who really do care about our communities. We care about the people in our neighborhoods. We're here in Utah and in Colorado. We're here because you called us and you asked us to go. And so as sent ones, Lord, I just pray that you provide for these church leaders, provide for them financially. I know many things have been interrupted. Many plans have been interrupted. But I just pray for sustenance, and I pray, God, that we can pray, Father in heaven, holy is your name, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. You give us our daily bread, and you forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And you lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from the evil one. For yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. And we pray that same prayer that you taught your disciples to pray. And your kingdom come. And Lord, if this interruption and this online, having church online leads to the salvation of many, well, then we will be thankful for it, God. And we'll be thankful for what you're doing. And I'm thankful for the pastors and the leaders and the staff of the churches in Utah who are really pouring it out and have literally lived a life of sacrifice of the gospel. And just pray for them. And we just ask you that you bless them in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Thank you, everyone.